Welcome to the Mike Abadir Show. You'll want to sit tight this hour as host Mike Abadir and co-host Gino Bacola talk to the experts, celebrities, and figures from the worlds of sports and business of sports. We cover the NFL, baseball, basketball, soccer, and horse racing, so we have all of the bases covered. Now, we just need your participation. Here is your host, Mike Abadir.
Welcome, everyone, to today's Kentucky Derby Prep Show. Mike and Gino coming at you. We're going to be talking a lot of horse racing, and this is a fantastic time of year for sports. I'm actually not in Los Angeles, as I typically would be. I'm in Northern California here for one of my clients, Ben Sorensen's Pro Day at Sac State.
How'd that go, Mike? How'd it go?
It actually went pretty well. It went pretty well. You know, what they did is there's a stud out of Humboldt this year. He's probably going to be a mid-round draft pick. And what Sacramento decided to do was make it easy for the scouts who've had a long, they've had a long journey, right? From all the All-Star games, Senior Bowl, et cetera, in January on through the Combine, on through the Pro Days, all over the country. And so what they decided to do was have UC Davis, Sac State, and Humboldt piggyback off of one each other and have one big Pro Day. It was held at UC Davis, and my client, Ben Sorensen, weighed in at 240, 6'4". He ran pretty well, whether it be bench, 3-cone, L-drill, etc. He was probably within range of all the top combine guys. So I was real proud of him. A lot of teams came up to me afterwards and said that they were very, very intrigued by him. It really depends on if it's a 4-3 or a 3-4 team. He could be utilized in a variety of ways. So I'm excited and optimistic. We'll have to bring him on one of these days to, get his thoughts leading up to the draft.
And isn't it crazy? I wanted to talk about how great of a time of the year it is in sports. In my opinion, the 2 months from March to May is the best.
Agreed.
The best. But in football, there's no football going on. But what's great is we started the show talking about the NFL, and that just shows you what a beast the NFL has become. Because think about this, Mike. We just had March Madness, NCAA basketball, not only for the men, but the women's tournament was excellent this year. A couple buzzer beaters in the Final Four. The big UConn team goes down. We got the NBA and the NHL playoffs starting within a week or so. The Masters is this week for golf. The
Tiger Mania.
Tiger Mania. We had opening day last week for the MLB season, so we're a week in. And, wrestling fans, Ronda Rousey's going to be at Wrestlemania this weekend, and that's the biggest event of the year for the wrestling fans. So within a week, we had the Final Four games, the MLB opening day, the Masters, the Santa Anita Derby, the Bluegrass, the Wood Memorial. We had the Florida Derby last week, and Wrestlemania. There's a lot going on, and what's nice is we're gonna take care of really all of it for you. Last week, we did the MLB season preview. We talked with Jerry Hairston Jr. and we talked with Eno Sarris. So we've got a Dodger preview and then NL West preview. And then with Eno, we talked about the rest of the league. Today, we're going to focus in on horse racing with the Derby preps with three awesome guests. We covered NCAA tournament. If you want to go back in the archives, you can hear Caleb and Dan and Monique give some of their analysis and some of their thoughts, and you can see how they kind of finished up. We had our pools and our group challenge brackets, and then Kentucky Derby preps will just continue on each week. Next week we'll probably have a segment where we preview the Arkansas Derby and we kind of recap what happened this week. And then, as the weeks get closer, we're only going to be about a month away from the Derby. So we'll probably have one or two really big shows, I think, where we have a guest or two on and we really dive into the field of 20 once we know it's set. But Mike, it is sports overload, and I could not be happier. This is the kind of time I love when there's just so much going on.
Absolutely. Totally agree with you. I would like to talk a little bit of baseball before we bring our first guest on, but real quickly, give us a recap on how the show's contest went with respect to the March Madness polls.
Okay, so in the tournament challenge, the second chance tournament challenge, because we created a second one, Travel Ken gets the win. So Travel Ken, TravelKen 1. You are the winner. Congratulations in that tournament. So you get a $100 Amazon gift card, and you get to host a segment on our show about anything. So we're going to send out a tweet after we get off the air, and we're going to get in contact with you. So we'll
Good
know
work,
how. Great job, Ken. So we'll know how to get you your prize, and we'll know how to talk to you about hosting the segment. And then with the Mike Abadir Show group, honestly got to give it up. Beth F. she gets the job done. She picked the mostly chalk bracket. She wins with 139 points. But, we give him a lot of crap. But Dave Ice Cold Exacta, he did really well. He finished second. And Bill finishes third with the My Primo bracket. Marcus Getkin finished fourth, and then Ray Mueller round out the top 5. So we have prizes for the top 3. And Beth F., congratulations. You're going to be hosting a segment on our show whenever you want. So we'll send that out on social media, and we'll get in touch with the winners. Great job, guys. This was a difficult year, and you and I can just say we were not good, Mike. Some of the teams that we really, really liked going far struggled. We had a little run with Loyola to at least get a couple games deep, a team that you and I both liked. But other than that, this is a year that we're going to be very happy to forget and move on, and then just bring in Craig in a minute and talk horse racing.
No, you know what? I'm just gonna refer back to my second place finish in the NFL contest. I'm not even gonna talk about the March Madness because that was an absolute disaster. I love that there's a female representation with the winner. Good job, Beth. I also want to give props to my cousin Waleed. He's the only one of either pool who had the exact finals matchup. He had Michigan and Villanova, but he rode Michigan all the way to the top, and that cost him. If he had Michigan, he would have swept the finals, would have won this whole thing on both pools.
If he had Villanova, yeah, he had Villanova,
but he took Michigan, and I can't blame him. Once you ride them that long, it's
you got to go with them. Yeah, you got to
go with them. Makes a lot of sense. Now, we only have I don't want to keep Craig waiting too long, so really quickly want to mention that there's some breaking news. Kyrie Irving is out for the rest of the regular season and the playoffs. Celtics are absolutely done. Stick a nail in them. Also want to mention fantastic start for Shohei Ohtani, especially after there were a lot of naysayers from a poor spring training performance. I love seeing it. I'm super excited about this. I want to see him hit 320 bombs and be a 15-game winner. I'd love to see that. But let me ask you, Gino, are you disappointed in obviously you're disappointed, but what do you think of the first week of the Dodgers so far?
Yeah, it's one of those things where I don't mind Ohtani hitting 300 either, as long as it's not this week when I'm playing against him in fantasy, where he's obviously just crushing me. Thanks. Yeah. But it's disappointing. But you know what? It's funny. I expected a slow start to the year. It seems like just all the bounces they were getting last year are going the opposite way. I think it's a little bit of a World Series hangover. To be honest, they lost 2 games by 1 run, and then they lost another game when they were up 6-3 in the 9th. So they should very easily have 3 more wins. It's not like they're getting killed in games. Their pitching's actually been very, very good, too. So I'm not worried. I think it's going to be a couple weeks where it's a little bit of a lull, kind of a hangover. You got to get over that, and you got to move on and just kind of focus in on this season. But if we're talking NBA, I know this man would love to talk some NBA with us because he is an Oklahoma City Thunder fan. They are holding on. They're holding on right now, Mike. They're only a half game above the 8 seed. They're in the 6 seed, but there is so much in the Western Conference from 4 to 8. So much parity. Actually, from 4 to 10, there's only 3 games separating the 4th seed through the 10th seed. Craig, before we jump into the Santa Anita Derby, what are your thoughts on the OK City Thunder from a fan over there? What's the feeling like?
It's a lot of apprehension around here, really. I think most of us realize that Presti he gambled and he lost. It just didn't work. Melo hasn't been good. Paul George has been awful since the All-Star break, to put it nicely. I'll always be out there supporting Russ. I think he's great. I love how hard he plays, gives everything he has. But I think most of us are pretty much resigned to the fact that even if the team makes it, we're going out in the first round.
We're talking here with Craig Milikowski from Timeform US. Very lucky to have Craig on. He does the figures for Timeform US. And Craig, this is a great time right now. We had the Florida Derby last week. We'll have the Arkansas Derby next week. But this week we have 3 big prep races. And you're going to get a lot of movement on that Derby points list this week between the Santa Anita Derby, the Bluegrass, and the Wood Memorial. We're lucky we're going to have 3 handicappers, one of them taking care of each one of those races. And for you, you've got the Santa Anita Derby, which the news we found out this week was that we're not going to get that rematch between Bolt Yoro and McKenzie. But I don't think anybody else in the world besides Bob Baffert could have quite the bench where you have no McKenzie in the Santa Anita Derby. And it looks like Baffert might actually have even a better home run hitter in Justified jumping up off the bench. So go ahead and take it away with the Santa Anita Derby. Kind of give us your overview on the race and where do you kind of lean? What do you see as the narrative in this race?
Sure. Well, first off, I got to admit I was a little disappointed. Obviously that McKenzie's hurt, but but from a more selfish reason that justifies no longer going to Arkansas, because I'm actually going to make that trip next week and was looking forward to seeing him. But, I love California racing, which kind of odd for a guy that grew up in the East, but I've always been fascinated by the speed out there. So it's good to see him there because, if he didn't go in the Santa Anita Derby, I think the race will basically be a walkover. I don't think we get much from a betting perspective in this race. I'd be shocked if one of the top two choices didn't win in both Oro or Justify. I think there's nobody else. So we even got a couple maidens in the race. When I was looking over it yesterday, I saw Orbit Rain, and I couldn't help but wonder if Mick Ruiz was thinking he had to enter the horse just to get the race to go or something. It didn't make a whole lot of sense, but... basically I think it's a 2-horse race. If you're looking to hit a try or something, I'm definitely against in Still Regard. I don't think he's going the right way, kind of an odd spot for him to show up in, and so maybe you could find something in the tries. But, I'm really excited to see Justify. As a speed figure guy, he's just been off the charts in his first 2 races. For me, he broke his maiden with a 130, which is just as big as I can remember since I think Beholder did the same thing as a 2-year-old when she was sprinting, and that was her second start, not her first. Just ran away from him, and then, believe it or not, even though he only ran a lower 123, which puts him right with the fastest horses all year, he was more impressive to my eye because he broke a bit slowly, sat off the pace, which was a quick pace, and he just kind of went by those horses like they were standing still. I know they weren't great competition, but at that point in the race, they were still moving. They all kind of fell apart pretty late. But, based on the pace figures I make, he was rolling when he went by those horses. He did it wide and he did it easily. So, I think the freak status some people are putting on him is probably justified. Not to be too punny, that kind of stuff.
Craig, let me add.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead, please.
I was going to say, and then you have both the Oro, who was kind of the same way as a 2-year-old. He popped his 3rd race out. He won the Front Runner Stakes heading into the Breeders' Cup. He popped a huge speed figure, a 124 for me, which I'm sure people remember. He ran faster than older fillies did. I want to say it was Paradise Woods who won that day. He was right there with the Colt Moob Tahij, I think, also won on that card. He was, looking like a freak. Then he had the tough trip at Del Mar in the Breeders' Cup. Struggled a bit that day, and then came back and kind of looked like his old self in the San Felipe. He couldn't quite get by McKenzie, but the steward said that was McKenzie's fault and put him up. But, first race off the layoff, as a guy looking to how he's going to do in the Derby, that part really didn't matter. I'm sure it mattered to bettors that day, but not so much for, where he's heading. And he looked like his old self. He's been training well. So, I just don't see anything but those two. And if I have to pick one, I'm going to go with Justify. He just looks like a freak to me.
I was going to ask you, Craig, whether or not you were high on Instilled Regard prior to his race at the fairgrounds.
He looked okay. I liked him his first time when he ran into Lecomte, and he won pretty easy, getting a wide trip. But he didn't run particularly fast that day, so I kind of, made a mental little bit of an excuse given the wide trip and that he won so easy. But then when he came back in the Risen Star, I wasn't a fan. He didn't look particularly good to me. The pace was a bit slow, but he was right there. He was within a length and basically got run away from in the stretch by Bravazzo and Snapper Sinclair. 2 horses that, they're decent enough horses, but I don't think they're any threat going forward in Grade 1 races. Derby or anywhere on the Triple Crown Trail. So, I have a lot of respect for Jerry Hollendorfer, and it wouldn't shock me if the horse rebounded and ran well, but he's a horse that if you're looking for any kind of value in here, which is tough to find with the top 2, he's a horse I'm going to toss and maybe try to get some other horses like maybe Pepe Tono in 3rd. I don't know what kind of value we can get there, but that's the only value angle I can come up with.
Yeah, because the reason I was asking that question is because I really liked what I saw from him in Southern California, and I kind of questioned the decision to go to New Orleans, to race at fairgrounds in those races, maybe because Hollendorfer thought it was an easier spot. But I think we may see a bounce-back performance, but I don't know if it's going to be good enough to take down the 2 biggies. The other question I was going to ask you is, it's more of a comment. Should be interesting that Justify and Audible, who looked lights out at Gulfstream in the Florida Derby, are both part owned at least by the China Horse Club. So that could be interesting to see if they end up having two in the Kentucky Derby.
Yeah, those guys have kind of come out of nowhere. I hadn't heard of them a year ago, and all of a sudden they're obviously making
the Silks.
With the horses.
The Silks issue. That was where they became big. Everybody heard about the Silks and what happened, right? Didn't they have the wrong Silks the one time, and then they they kind of then they became kind of big. One more question about this race, and then we'll kind of maybe get an opinion on you and something else at Santa Anita. What do you think the pace is going to be like early? Because Justify, as you mentioned, he looked, when he won his debut, he kind of looked like Dortmund, and you said it right. He was just kind of playing with him, really, in both races. He just, in his debut, he kind of broke right with him, and he didn't need the lead or get sent to the lead. He was just that good, and he ended up being right on the lead. And now I'm with Instilled Regard getting the rail draw. Bolt's not really a need the lead type. Do you think maybe they get aggressive, Rosario, and try to just send Instilled Regard, get him in front? I'm kind of curious to how you have this race unfolding early on.
Our pace projector at Timeform US, we kind of try to guess what's going to happen after the first turn and things shake out. And we have Justify well in front. And that's mostly based on how fast he's run. If I had to guess, I don't think they necessarily have to have the lead, and I think maybe Core Beliefs will gun from the outside, and he may just be ceded the lead here where they just give it to him, but I think it'll be one of the two outside horses. I don't really think Bolt de Oro wants the lead. I don't think Instilled Regard wants it. I think, the field's not big enough where you have to worry too much about getting trapped on the rail or anything like that, so I think the outside two are going to clear, and it's just kind of up to the rider, Mike Smith, I assume, he's riding Justify. I think it's just kind of up to Mike Smith if he really wants the lead or if he just wants to let the 7 go on with it and just kind of sit off of him. If I had to guess, that's what I think he'll do. Just sit right off Core Belief, kind of like he did in his allowance race. Just sit a little bit outside and take over whenever he pleases, really.
Craig, we have about 2 or 3 minutes before we get to the break. Is there anything else on the Santa Anita card that strikes your fancy on Saturday?
Not particularly. I was a little surprised that the Oaks came up kind of, I say light in that I think it's not a deep field, but I think there's some definitely quality in there. I think Midnight Basou is almost a lock in there, but I am going to try her with some exactas with some long shots underneath, and Finesse Beret, I believe it is, the French horse, and Exuberance. They're the two I like most. And there's a few horses I like in the Bluegrass this week at Keeneland. I'm going to try Kansaka at 10-1 shipping out of Southern California. I think he's getting a much easier field. There are some questions whether he likes the distance or not, but I actually like how he looked in the stretch last time after he had quite a tough break in that race. It didn't get a lot of press, but if you watch the head-on, he basically went to his face at the start. So he's one, if he's near his 10-1 morning line, I'm going to keep an eye on.
I'm going to put you on the spot for a second, Craig. Is that all right?
Yeah, anytime.
Okay. Did we see this year's Derby winner last weekend, or are we going to see the winner this weekend, or is it none of the above?
If I was a betting man, I'd say we're going to see it this weekend. Which one it's going to be, I wouldn't want to guess. Maybe I'd go with whoever won the Santa Anita Derby. Kind of lean towards the California Colts, and they've proven the best here in recent years. I was impressed by Mendelssohn over in Dubai. I did some unofficial figures for that. He got a 128, which is huge, but I think he was aided by the track, and I think he's still going to have a tough time shipping over here. And, if he wins, great. I think, it wouldn't shock me, but he's not going to be much of a price. The Arkansas Derby took a hit when Justify didn't go. It'll be a good race, but I think the strength is this weekend.
Very good. I think that there's also a possibility that maybe we saw the next Belmont winner out of Gulfstream in Hofburg. I was pretty impressed with that performance. I'm not sure what the Timeform US figures are going to look like, and how things are going to shape up. But I liked how he closed. Audible obviously is going to be getting a lot of the attention money-wise in the Derby fields. I think we're going to be able to find some pretty good value. So looking forward to a great Triple Crown season.
Craig, let us know where...
Yeah, he
go ahead,
yeah. Last week.
Oh, that was your top choice?
Oh, yeah, Huffberg was last week in the Florida Derby. And he ran well. I knew he was going to run better than what he ran in his maiden race from a figure perspective. And he did, just not good enough to beat Audible. But he's definitely a horse with a bright future.
Very good. Well, we thank you very much. That's Craig Milkowski from Timeform US. Definitely encourage everybody who's playing these prep races and the entire Triple Crown series to utilize the Timeform US data. You will definitely get some more winners and bang for your buck out of all of these big races. Thank you very much, Craig. Appreciate you coming on with us, and let's talk to you again during the next couple of months here.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks for having me, guys, at any time.
Thanks, Craig. Good luck to your Thunder.
Yeah, there you go.
Craig Milkowski at Timeform US on Twitter, at Timeform US Figs. You can follow on Twitter. Always great insight. On a day like tomorrow, Saturday, he's a great follow because he'll be watching all the races and kind of live tweeting after things happen, and then he'll go back and he'll do his figures. So Craig's a really, really good follow if you're out there and you're playing the races. So glad to have him on. And now next up in just a few minutes, we'll have on Emily.
Yeah, let's take our very first commercial break and come back and continue the conversation about the Derby preps. So stay with us. We'll be back in a couple of minutes.
Think you've seen everything there is to see in online television? Let us surprise you. Visit voiceamerica.tv today for sports, health, business, and more on demand 24/7.
Are you ready for the latest sports news, the culture around the game, and unique insight? Then you need to make Kareem and the Coach your destination each week. Host Kareem Rush played for the LA Lakers and has the inside track to personas in both professional and college sports. Co-host Eric Newman is a former basketball coach and now a producer and filmmaker. Together they cover sports and entertainment in a fast-paced hour every Friday at 5 p.m. Eastern Time and 2 p.m. Pacific Time on the Voice America Sports Channel.
Want to experience football from the perspective of two former players who also have coaching experience? Tune in to Sports Info UM with Daryl Oliver and Sam Sword. We'll talk about the drafts, play-by-play, and even what's happening in the offseason. Daryl and Sam have the connections and the knowledge to bring you the inside stories of the game's past, present, and future. We'll cover the camps, on and off field, and everything else, football and beyond. Sports Info UM is heard Mondays at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific on the Voice America Sports Channel.
Your internet flagship station for sports, Voice America Sports.
This is the Mike Abadir Show. If you want to call in today, we can be reached at 1-888-346-9144. That's 1-888-346-9144. Or send an email to mike@themikeabadirshow.com. Now, back to this week's program.
Big thanks to Craig Milkowski there from Timeform US. You're going to want to go back and listen to his analysis of the Santa Anita Derby. Picked his brain a little bit on some of the other big preps around the country, but he gave us the focus really on Justify and Bolt d'Oro there in the Santa Anita Derby. Up next, we have our second guest, Emily Gullickson from Optics EQ. Emily is an excellent handicapper, and this weekend she's going to be focusing in on Keeneland for us. She'll be doing some Keeneland work overall, and the Bluegrass is, I think, the most fun of the three preps. From a handicapping standpoint, I had the most fun handicapping this race, Emily. Didn't it just seem like this one, it felt like there were, I think, the most directions you could go when you're comparing it with the Wood and the Santa Anita Derby?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I think this is a really good betting race. There's a lot of ways to go, and, if you have an opinion, and it's kind of even Good Magic. If you like Good Magic, he's probably going to be, somewhat of a fair price. And yeah, there's a lot of ways to go in here. It's a really fun betting race.
Now, the points are the key for this weekend, because we're going to have a lot of horses running that need points to get in. And when you look at a race like this in particular, there are going to be a lot of horses that are going to be begging for a second or a third place finish to try to get some of those points. So let's just kind of start with it, take it away. Kind of how do you see the narrative of this race? Like, where did you start? The ball is in your court.
Yeah, I mean, my approach pretty much stays the same. I always want to kind of start with who the favorite is and sort of work out from that. You need to know if you have a good favorite or a bad favorite. That just kind of like sets the tone for the race. So the favorite being Good Magic, I think that he is legit. He's classy enough. I think his last race, I think people are a little bit disappointed with him as the favorite. Wasn't really that terrible of a race considering the layoff, considering the way the track was playing. And, there's just a little bit more upside out of that. Not necessarily a horse you just get super excited to bet, but he's logical. It's hard to like take a hard stand against him. So kind of based on that, the fact that I think he's legit, but not crazy about the price, started looking at some of the other horses, going through the field. And I actually am kind of into a horse that I have a strong opinion that I feel like is a good bet in here in Marconi. Was kind of surprised to see him show up here. I thought maybe he'd stay or go back to New York rather. But yeah, I just think this race kind of sets up for him. There's some horses that want to be floridly placed. I think he's going to get kind of the right trip, and he's coming to the race the right way, just sort of an ever-improving type, and the extra ground is just going to fit this horse. So he's kind of my key in there, and 15 to 1 on the morning line at 6. I mean, that's just kind of a no-brainer win bet. Other than that, I just sort of looked at some of the other horses that I thought would be maybe sort of second, third choice and assess them on, their ability. One of those horses that I don't know what price is going to be. Maybe, the morning line's 10 to 1 on Kanthaka. You guys can correct me if I just said that wrong.
No, I think that's right. Kanthaka. Yeah, you're right.
Okay. All right.
I think
very
half,
good.
Right?
Yeah.
Half,
I think that, he's a horse that's going to go ahead.
Yeah, like 6 to 1, maybe half of the price, the morning line.
Yeah, that's what I think. I mean, he's been facing those good horses out in California, and I just think he's been really flattered as far as race shapes. He's had really fast paces to run at, and closing ground, and not that that's necessarily a bad thing, but it does flatter a horse when they get that type of setup. And same thing like Free Drop Billy is not another horse that you have a whole lot of knocks on, but he just doesn't excite me. He's sort of like I have the same impression about Instilled Regard in the Santa Anita Derby, where he just kind of does. He runs his race, and it's not overly flashy. It just kind of it's good, not an exciting type. Flame Away, I think, is a little bit vulnerable. While I liked him at Tampa, he had a little bit of a setup as far as the way the track was playing, a little bit of flow last time, and just from race shape and his post position could be just sort of working against him in this spot. Kind of another one in there that I it's when you pick a horse at a big price and then they win for you and then you kind of dislike them the next time out. So that's sort of the story with Quip at 6 to 1. I thought he just fit really well at Tampa and the Tampa Bay Derby, just sort of the way the race shaped out. And he had some numbers going back and thought he was a really live long shot in that spot. And in this spot, he's got to really move forward. I mean, his numbers are just on the low end. We give it optics like a figure range to win the race. He's on the lower end, so he's got to improve off that Tampa race where, he had a really nice trip. So I'm kind of keying around Marconi and kind of going some of the other ones I used. Zing Zang, I think that horse has a little bit more upside, being a deep closer. That's a little bit problematic, but I'm going to throw him in the mix. His morning line's way too big. Sporting Chance, I've been kind of watching this horse at Oaklawn, just sort of watching him off the layoff, and he's got a lot of try to him, and this horse is definitely going to be on my tickets from a spread perspective. Using him for sure, and Tis Mischief as well. I'm not super crazy about the added ground, but it's really hard. I think this horse is better than those double-digit beats. I mean, he's been against the flow. He's kind of had some traffic and not that great a ride. So big morning line on that horse, which I don't expect to stick either, but he'll still be a good price.
Yeah, and what's great about this race compared to what we just talked with Craig about the Santa Anita Derby is you legitimately mentioned, and even the horses that you didn't know your numbers and your figures don't have that high in this race, they're horses that still are not complete dismisses. And that's what's great is that this is a really, really fun race. Every horse you mentioned is semi-live. Zing Zang, Sporting Chance, Kenthaka, even Quip, who had a good race last time, maybe doesn't fit as well here. I like Marconi quite a bit. That's the half-brother to Mucho Macho Man. Also, tidbit. I love to give these tidbits, and since I'm Italian, that was the Italian physicist who won the Nobel Prize for Physics back in 1909. I'm sure Emily knew that one and was going to give us that little tidbit because that has so much to do with the horse race. Anyways, nonetheless, great race. We have 7 graded stakes winners, 3 grade 1 winners. It's the grade 2 bluegrass where horses are looking for points. So for you, it's going to be kind of built around Marconi?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, he's a win bet, and again, sort of spread a little bit and playing exotics, but using less of 4 and 5, Kanthaka and Quip, and Flame Away. I mean, I'm leaving Good Magic in, and then trying to use the 1, Zing Zang, Sporting Chance, Tis Mischief, and 9. I mean, because it's a betting standpoint, you kind of just have to go through scenarios. Probably have to leave the 10 in for those underneath spots, and I'm going to even throw in the 14 as kind of another one that could run underneath. But yeah, it'll be anchored around Marconi for sure.
So Emily, I want to play a little game with you if we could. I want you to help me, please, nail down an exacta and a trifecta based on my scribbles and my notes. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to throw out thoughts and ideas and then see which ones you agree most with, which ones you disagree with, until we've kind of settled in on a exacta trifecta play. So I'm of the mindset that when it comes to these rapidly improving 3-year-olds, sometimes you kind of have to step back from the racing form and from the past performances and take a look at some of the connections. So that's what I'm going to do, and I'm going to get your help with this. So throwing them out there. Doug O'Neill's got some recent success in this race. Dale Roman's sneaky, especially with the underneath runners. Dwayne Lucas always surprises. Hollendorfer, he's kind of due, especially in the Derby. Asmussen is just super, super hot. His barn has just been on fire. Chad Brown, bet against on dirt with favorites. Ryan Moore and Pletcher, interesting combo. And the China Horse Club shows up again with Quip. Those are my notes. From that, give me a good trifecta.
Okay. So you have me completely out of my element because I'm so focused. I'm so focused on the horses as individuals that sometimes, like at this point, I'm like not even.
Who's the trainer of that horse?
Anymore.
Yeah. No, I'm the same way. I'm a video chart guy.
Ask the worst person.
Well, I'll tell you what. Your method is. I was just going to say your method is more proven.
What's that?
I was just going to say your method is much more proven. But the thing is, I've just seen so much improvement that sometimes you can't really take.
And with optics, that's what we do. We focus so much on the horse, than being like, okay, here's the connection, here's the pedigree. It's like, is this horse fast enough? Is this horse classy enough? Is this horse going to get the right trip? And is this horse in the right form? And that's sort of how I approach the horse race, that if I start kind of playing like with these what ifs and like, what's Ryan Moore doing here? I mean, Ryan Moore's not the best in the world. Like if he's on a horse, like I'm full confidence, so those types of things where you overthink it, we're getting away from the fact of who this horse is and can they win the race.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And that's why I kind of liked when you started off with Marconi, because of the connections. That kind of piqued my interest a little bit. See, when I stick to, just last week's form, I always miss the boat on who's got so much upside for the following week. You know what I mean? So I've kind of maybe I put a little bit too much stock in some of the human connections. But hey, you're the one with the proven track record here, so I'm going to ride what you said all the way to the bank. I'm going to listen to this 2 or 3 times, write everything down, and then hopefully send Gino a text that I've hit it.
Well, what's funny is if you just using your connections, and then from what we heard from Emily before, she liked Marconi. You mentioned Kenthaka, and that was the horse that she's going to have underneath. Sporting Chance is a good.
That's the horse I'm not going to have underneath.
Kanthaka is not going to be underneath. Okay, so Marconi, Sporting Chance is a horse who on the spread tickets and is a good underneath horse because he's got some speed and he'll be in the mix early on. Free Draw Billy and Tis Mischief, kind of two. Tis Mischief was another one. So from your connections, Mike, we can kind of combine and you see the way that you handicap the race, the way that Emily handicaps the race, and you can definitely have a middle point in there.
Yeah, absolutely. And that leads me to asking you, where do you stand then? You've kind of heard my thoughts and Emily's thoughts. Where does Gino land?
Yeah, I actually like I actually have Marconi on top, which is funny. I think that he's just one of those big kind of late developing horses. And I would not be surprised to see him run like a really good second or third here and then be a horse that's like a Belmont horse or a horse that towards the second half of the year is going to end up being maybe one of the better 3-year-olds. I think he has a lot of upside. I think he's still a little goofy, and when you watch his races, he's kind of his own worst enemy, kind of slow into stride. But then once he gets going, he's a freight train, and he's kind of tough to stop. And I think he will get the setup in here. So I'm in agreement with Emily. I think even if we can get around like 10-1 or so on Marconi, 8-10 to 1, I still think that's fair. So that's.
So you think he's going to gobble up some money, huh?
Well, yeah, I think with Pletcher and I think with Moore, you're always going to take a little bit of money. I think this is going to be a really spread out race. I think you're going to see a lot of 5, 6 horses between 5 and 10, 12 to 1 in here.
Yeah, I totally agree. So let's
Emily,
get some thoughts on the rest of the card.
Yeah, we only have about 2 or 3 minutes left. Let's. Do you want to talk the other preps real quick, Emily? The other 2 big preps?
Yeah, I mean, Santa Anita we can go through really quick. I mean, I think Craig said it's a 2-horse race. To me, it's a 1-horse race. I think Justified just rolls on the front end. Bolt Oro, I think he's a good horse, but last race was pretty hard, both, from a racing standpoint and a little bit physical. So that gives me reservation. I think it just kind of sets up for Justified out on the front end. I don't think anybody can run with him early, so his race to lose. And then as far as the Wood Memorial goes, I'm a little soft on Enticed, who's a favorite in there. I just haven't really seen a big progression as far as speed figures and just him as an individual. So I'm a little bit soft on that horse. And then the rest of the field is kind of the same. And so I'm taking a shot with King Zachary in here. I know he's a maiden breaker, but we actually have that speed figure as a 99, which is the highest in the field. And you go to his race 2 back. I mean, that horse ran such an awesome race in third.
Brutal
he
trip.
Trouble and was probably best, and so he's just a horse that's just improving. And like I said, everybody else is kind of the same. I'm a little bit soft on 2 in here, but like 1, 2, 8 and 9. I mean, there's just not a whole lot of separation on them. So, at 20 to 1 with a horse that I think is going to get a perfect trip and has the highest optics figure last time out, it's kind of just a no-brainer play for me with him.
Yeah, he looked like a pro, too. That's what I love. He went from having a ton of trouble in the February race at Gulfstream Park from the rail. And when I say trouble, when you go back and watch that race, that's about as much trouble as you'll see a horse have. And then he came back on again, which was incredible. And then he showed a different dimension when you stretch him out a little. He sits perfect. And I love how he just kind of sat nicely in between horses. There were some things going on around him, but he didn't move. He just sat when they asked him to go, moves to the lead. Easy, big win. I'm with you on that one, Emily, too. I think King Zachary is a must-use in all your exotics there at Aqueduct. So, unfortunately, Emily, you've got the weight of the world on your shoulders with you on Marconi and King Zachary.
At least at the end of the weekend, you won't have to text me asking if I had a good weekend or not. So
yeah, that's true. That's true. I'll know. We'll either both have a great one or we'll both be scratching our head and retracing our steps, seeing where we went wrong. Emily, awesome. Thank you so much. We always appreciate you on here with us.
One more thing. I know you guys have to go,
do.
But
go ahead.
Anybody, I'm gonna write up kind of a horse by horse of the Bluegrass Stakes. So that'll be on opticsdq.com, totally free. You just have to register on the website, but there's no charge for that. And then I'll be doing full card selections available on Brisnet as well. I think you have to pay for that, but there'll be tons of free content on OpticsDQ.
And you always have I've been noticing you've been doing a lot of the free, like one race of the week or a race of the day with on Optics, where if you just register, you can get those for free. So you're giving a lot of free content out there right now.
Yeah, we'd love to just do kind of like picks and stuff for free. So we're trying to figure out how to work that in. But yeah, there's always tons of free content on there, and open to questions and stuff as well regarding optics.
Okay, one question, Emily, because we talked to you so much about horse racing, and I don't even know, when you're taking your 5-minute break, or when you're not watching one of the million replays, what are you doing? What other kind of stuff are you into?
I don't know, a lot of different stuff. Music. I still like to work out. I just moved, so basically the last 30 days have been moving. So that's kind of all I've been focusing on. But yeah, I like to stay active in the community, and yeah.
Awesome, Emily, and she's a former roller girl. You can find that right on Twitter at Emily Optics EQ. Emily, thank you so much. Great job, like always. Let's get a couple of these bombs home this weekend. Let's get the King Zachariah, and we'll get Marconi home, and we'll be having some fun.
And that would mean I hit some exactas. Yeah, thank you, Emily. I was going to tell you, by the way, some of the feedback I get about the show is that what they like is that it's raw, honest, live, and unscripted. So the dialogue that we had is exactly what people love hearing. You know what I mean? So That was really good stuff there. I apologize for putting you a little bit on the spot, but you know what? Your analysis was so good. And ultimately, like Gina was saying, we're kind of sort of landing on the try that I'm kind of looking for between some of my angles and what you said. So hopefully there will be some winners for the listeners out there. Hopefully all three of us will do well this weekend. We thank you once again, and let's have you back for some of the big races coming up over the next couple of months.
That'd be awesome. Totally available to do it.
Outstanding.
Thank you, Emily.
Thank you, Emily.
On Twitter at Emily Optics EQ. You can go to optixeq.com for all of the information there. They do a great job. And as she said, like the site that she works for, they kind of handicap the races similar to how I do. I look at it a lot in the horse. I'm looking a lot at individual horse, their trip, their charts, that I see something in the race that maybe isn't in the running lines, things like that. So actually, as you see today, a lot of the times, I'll notice that Optics and I will land on similar horses, or kind of be looking at value horses that we think are going to run better, kind of based on some of their previous trips. So I always love getting Emily's opinion on the races. So far, we've been very lucky to have Craig and Emily. And so now we have one more guest to join us in a minute. But I think, Mike, it's probably a good time for us to take a quick break.
Yep, we're up against it. We're a little bit late, actually. So let's take a break. Stay with us, everyone. And we will be back with Oorah! Oorah! TVG. So stay with us. We'll be right back.
Become our friend on Facebook. Post your thoughts about our shows and network on our timeline. Visit facebook.com/Voice America.
We're talking big game adventures this week on The Revolution with Jim and Trav. While most seasons are still months away, that doesn't mean we can't start preparing for our fall pursuits right now. Joining us is Jana Waller, host of Skullbound TV, Derek Ratliff, president and founder of Horizon Firearms, plus Tom and Nick of Become One. It's presented by Outdoor Channel, Sportsman Channel, World Fishing Network, and My Outdoor TV. Friday afternoons at 1 Pacific Time on the Voice America Sports Channel.
Get ready for the Get Down with Hurley Brown. Want to get inside of the minds of the players and coaches? We'll talk everything sports, but with a focus on the NFL, NBA, and college football. We'll review and preview the week's big games. We'll talk about the draft choices and free agents, and go inside the teams for news, recruiting, and what's next from the colleges to the pro teams. It's the Get Down with Hurley Brown. Tuesdays at 3 p.m. Eastern Time, 12 noon Pacific on Voice America Sports.
Your internet flagship station for sports, Voice America Sports.
This is the Mike Abadir Show. If you want to call in today, we can be reached at 1-888-346-9144. That's 1-888-346-9144. Or send an email to mike@themikeabadirshow.com. Now, back to this week's program.
2 down, 1 to go. Talking about the big Kentucky Derby prep races this weekend. We hit on the Santa Anita Derby with Craig Milikowski. We hit on the Bluegrass at Keeneland with Emily Gullickson. And next up, last but certainly not least, a good friend of mine, a colleague, a gentleman who is an excellent person, but an even better handicapper. You know him as the Sarge. Oorah! Nick Hines joins us to talk a little Wood Memorial. Sarge, how you doing today?
Good morning, Sarge.
Good day, sir.
Awesome.
I don't know. I think I would prefer that to be flip-flopped. I would like to be a good handicapper and a much better person, to be honest with you.
I was thinking the same.
It's all good.
There we go. Sarge, it's a fun time in sports right now. We were mentioning at the beginning of the show, we got March Madness, we got the Masters this week, it's Wrestlemania week, we got baseball just kicked off, NBA and NHL playoffs, they're going to be coming up in just a week, and then we got all these Derby preps. This is just a great time of the year. We have 3 of them on Saturday. And the one we're going to talk with you a little bit about right now is over at Aqueduct, the Wood Memorial. And honestly, you look at this race, the only horse of this field that's going to be in the Derby starting gate that we know for sure, barring any injury, is Enticed. The rest of this group, they're trying to make a name for themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, I was taken by the fact that they've dispatched Enticed at 6-5 in the morning line. I think that of all the favorites that you'll see in stakes races this weekend, not to mention the Derby preps, I think he is the worst 6-5 favorite that you'll ever stare down the barrel of. I was impressed with his win in Gotham, but when you put it into context as far as who was second in the race, who's running against him again, an old-time Revival was 35-1, coming off of you can call it a restricted stakes defeat at Laurel. In the fact that he's only 6-1, I think this is a very, very good betting race. And, from a horizontal standpoint, when you look at the pick 4s, pick 5, pick 6s, this is a race that I think could be a dogleg for many that are using their wise handicapping cap, in a sense that I think Enticed is going to get beat. And then I'll tell you why. It's threefold. First and foremost, I don't think he's a 1 1/8 horse. Secondly, when you look at his work tab, he's had 2 maintenance half-mile drills since the Gotham win, which tells me that Kieran McLaughlin has backed off. Thirdly, the competition that he had behind him is marginal, added the fact that I know that in their minds, with the Godolphin Blues coming off of a tremendous Dubai Saturday, they don't feel in their heart of hearts that they have to win this race. It just sounds like the Wood Memorial is a grade 1 anymore. It's a grade 2. They're already locked into the Derby. So where's the pressure?
It's a great point. No, and that's, I think, one thing you have to handicap when you're looking at these races, in all 3 of them. Who needs the points? Who's a horse that needs to get in? Who's a horse that is going to be exerted to finish that maybe second or third, whereas other horses like Enticed are not. And I'm with you, Sarge. I think it's funny, in all honesty, I have Enticed in a fantasy league I'm playing in. I root for him to pick up points and stuff. I don't think he needs to win this race. I could see like a non-threatening runner-up, second or third place finish from him in here, picking up some pieces late. So we're against Enticed. Let's talk about some of the horses that we do think have an opportunity, or who are some of the plays in this race.
Well, I find this field one of the more intriguing fields of all the Derby preps, because some of the names you see in there, it almost kind of gives you the impression that it's fish out of water. First and foremost, Baffert with Restoring Hope. I mean, their plan was to go to Sunland Park, and that didn't work out. He was not able to get in the race. Baffert won this race back in 2006 with Bob and John. Other than that, you look at this race's history, this is one spot in New York that Baffert hasn't really had much success at. But when you look at the pedigree suggests that a 1 1/8 should be no issue. I think visually, his maiden win, I thought it was pretty relative, although it was a restricted race, meaning that R in the form, basically for horses that were either homebreds or purchased for $100,000 or less. So it was kind of a tailor-made race for an owner breeder like Gary or Mary West. But all of that being said, the horse is training exceptionally well, and I think the fact that he has California speed going to New York he is a substantial, I think, candidate as far as going gate to wire. I don't believe he's going to be 4-1. I think his odds will float. I would have liked to have seen a race in March, but I don't. It wasn't by design. I mean, obviously they tried to get this horse in multiple times and he didn't get in. So the truth is, I think Restoring Hope is an intriguing horse at 4-1, just based on his speed and his Baffert speed. And I think he's a faster horse at Old Time Revival. If that horse decides to get involved, then fine. But I think Restoring Hope has a tactical edge. So I think he's one of the horses there. Although I'm not a huge fan of Baffert in New York. I mean, of all the states that he races in, I have to say that's probably one of his weaker spots.
Yeah.
Unless we're talking Belmont,
Sarge, first of all, happy Easter, my friend. He is risen. It seems like most of the likes that I give you on Twitter are of the same variety, so you know what I mean. And so
Amen.
Many blessings to you and your family. My question, thank you. My question for you is, in the whole scheme of things, I know this is a very good wagering opportunity, like you mentioned, and I agree with you on that. Is this race relevant in the whole scheme of things with respect to the Kentucky Derby and the Triple Crown?
I mean, it's relevant for horses trying to get into the Kentucky Derby. As far as any one of these horses winning the Derby, Preakness, or Belmont, I would lay whatever odds you would be willing to accept. I mean, the bottom line is I think there are some nice horses in here, but I see Ohio Derby, Indiana Derby, in a
West Virginia Derby.
Right. I don't see any. The truth is, Enticed, I have all the respect for the horse. I just don't think he's quite in the conversation of a Bolt Oro, a Justify, an Audible, or even a Magnum Moon for that matter. Obviously the other point being is you have the Arkansas Derby and Solomini staying there. I still have my doubts about him. Enticed, if he were to step up into this race, let's say he moves forward off of the Gotham. Let's say he wins the Wood by 6. Then yeah, he's definitely relevant. He definitely belongs in the conversation, and a horse that you would include in your exotics in the Kentucky Derby. But I'm not convinced I think he is on paper what he is.
Well, I think I have a little bit of a historical bias in terms of recency. To me, that race just hasn't produced a lot of noise with respect to the Kentucky Derby. And I think that kind of biases my feelings a little bit about the Wood.
Not recently. I would have to agree with you wholeheartedly. But, I think when you kind of put into context the horses that have won over the recent years, names like Irish Warcry, Frosted, even Gemologist, I really feel like a lot of those horses had distance limitation. And as far as the first Saturday in May, even Verrazano, he had a lot of those horses off the top of my mind, they just were soft. They would have a glass jaw, so to speak. And I said that about Mohiman when he ran against Nyquist, and people looked at me funny. But that's my point. Kieran McLaughlin he's one of the best horsemen out there, and I have the utmost respect for him. He works very hard. He's a likable person, and he takes very good care of his horses. But he doesn't. To me, when a horse gets to a certain point, they get to a certain point. And Gino, Mike, you guys obviously watch every sport, but I think March Madness in college basketball puts it in perspective. I mean, granted, you have to have the athlete, but at the same time, you have to have the coaching. And I think at this stage of the game, it's the coaching and the training that's going to get them to the next level. So when I talk about Enticed, I'm not saying I don't believe that he has the ability. I don't know if the program is getting the most out of him. You win the Gotham, you train harder. You push to try and get to that first Saturday in May. But those half-mile spins down at the little resort down there in Florida, I mean, to me, that doesn't tell me that they're putting the finishing touches on this horse. So I try and play against those and take advantage of 6-5. But that's not to say that the horse couldn't step up in a Wood and win by 5 or 6, which I don't think he will. And even if he were, I would still look back at the field and say, who was in there? So when you talk about the relevancy of this race, I mean, the last time it was real relevant was, 2003 with Empire Maker? It's been a long time.
Yeah, 15 years. That's right. Yeah. We're talking with the Sarge, Nick Hines. We only have about 2 or 3 minutes left in the show, and we're over at Aqueduct. Sarge, do you have any opinion? Did you look at the other preps at all? I mean, any opinion on Bolt Oro, Justify out here in the San Anita Derby?
Well, obviously, it's probably the most intriguing matchup with Justify and Bolt d'Oro. You know, I've kind of gone back and forth. You know, I think Justify has got real talent. There's no doubt to that. I mean, is he LeBron James that's ready for his breakout performance? He could be. The one thing that's a little mystifying to me is when Justify works with Opportunity, who's pretty much a drop set closer type, and Opportunity is the rabbit in a 6 furlong drill. That was a little awkward for me to watch. So, bottom line, he's going to get battle tested. Mick Ruiz, as much as he says that, you know, obviously they're pointing to the Derby, even going to the San Felipe, his goal, to me, it sounded almost as if it was more about the Santa Anita Derby than it was Kentucky Derby. So I know in my heart of hearts that after Saturday, there better be no excuse from either camp. You know, we weren't fully cranked. We weren't ready. Bottom line is the best horse is going to win. For me, the fact that Bolt d'Oro's battle-tested, if Justify beats him fair and square, then I'm a believer. But until that happens...
I like it. Good analysis there.
Got to ask you one question before we let you go, Sarge. What are you most excited for this weekend for WrestleMania?
You know, it's odd because you would think that you're kind of in anticipation of the big match. You know, I have to say I've been disappointed with Cena. I think he's gotten soft where he's tried to come off as a bit of a heel, which, look, I would rather have him slap the gold chains on and the cap sideways and go in there and slap a couple of raps out and make it interesting at least than what he's doing right now. So for me, it's all about what the females do. I mean, what's this Ronda Rousey? I'm anticipating to see if she can actually step her game up. But I think the female division, I think they're more entertaining right now than the men, and the men simply don't have any personality. So what can I
agree.
tell you?
Well, hey, gentlemen, I'm getting in my ear. We got about 10 seconds to close here,
All right,
so I don't want to cut anybody off. Thank you, Sarge. Tremendous analysis as always. We appreciate when you come on. Gino, let's make some money this weekend. Thank you for everybody for tuning in.
Hoorah!
And hoorah! We will see you guys all next week. Have a great sports weekend, everyone.
Thanks for joining us this week for the Mike Abadir Show. Please tune in again next Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time and 11 a.m. Pacific Time for another show with Mike and his co-host, Gino Bacola, on the Voice America Sports Channel. Have a great week.